This man has never knocked nobody out cold. He's a bully. He's slow. He has no skill, no footwork. He's awkward. And I have been giving him a name. Because he fights. When he's fighting, if you ever watch him in the ring, he drags like that after his opponent. and how's the mummy gonna catch me?
And all I had to do was to go out and beat a man who had no skill, no class. Seriously, the man had no skill. I don't know why the world is so foolish to believe in him and think that I wasn't going to win.
Well, when you say you're ready to go to war right now...
I see that bear on the street, I beat him before the fight.
You'd actually take him on before the fight?
Beat him like I'm his daddy.
Basketball players out there, football players, they want to beat so bad, they want to get everybody. I'll go to Mars, I don't care.
For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, let's get ready to rumble!
Good evening, fellow viewers, and welcome to another episode of Lights Out Sports Debates, where we dare you to debate, okay? And it's kind of an impromptu episode where we're going to have a, hopefully, many here will do some reaction shows, but this one against a spicy take that one Daryl Morey had. And I mean, it's probably been in the news. You guys have seen it if you're sports aficionados. I mean, we know our good friend Scap Attack react to it, where basically, long story short, he was saying that how the bubble championship, we all had our suspicions, was in fact didn't matter, didn't mean anything, that people don't respect it, and how it's not really considered a real title. His words, not necessarily mine, but we're going to give our opinions on that and kick it off. I'm T Perfect. This is Dart. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's 9 o'clock here in the middle of Oahu. We just survived a once in a lifetime experience of a tsunami that never came, which is fantastic in its own right. But if you lived here, you would understand the.
I was waiting for you guys to get wiped out, man. I'm disappointed.
I was too. I started a live stream, and then I'm like, wait, no, it's not happening.
I watched it till like 11 o'clock your time, really. And
wow, yeah. Hey, science is science, man. Like I understand 5 or 10 minutes, but like after I did wait another 5 or 10 minutes after it was supposed to destroy the entire island, yeah. And then I realized that it wasn't going to happen. Like there's good enough mathematicians to understand when it should or shouldn't hit. So
yeah, I was like, they were like, oh, it's going to be like 8 to 10 feet. I'm like, I'm here for it. Let's get. But yeah, what do you just off the cuff there? Or I know obviously we've kicked this around. I don't think we ever sat down and talked about it, but the bubble ring in general and like this dude's comments. I mean, it's nothing we haven't heard before. But what's your take on that ring in general?
All right, yeah. So for that ring, I think all rings are created equal. I am not an air tax guy. I think from 1947, 1948 until today, every championship matters. And the reason why is because everybody who has won a championship has beaten everyone in front of them under the circumstances and rules that were applied during the time. So for me, it doesn't matter if it's the Philadelphia Warriors or if it's the Oklahoma City Thunder. which is for them. We watched it live together in a random Buffalo Wild Wings bar. For Game 7, it probably is the finest in Ala Mall. But besides that, but every ring is created equal because you can't compare this 2025 season to 1947 or 1948 because it's time and space. However you want to describe it, the whole purpose of it is that even though the circumstances, if you want to say the ring is corny, I'm not saying it's not. But to say that it doesn't count, period, I think is a little bit blasphemous in respect to that everyone else they played, unless you want to admit that the NBA is purely entertainment and that it's purely about just drawing viewers in with the greatest basketball players in the world, just essentially the biggest exhibition proliferated sport there is, then I think that it counts, and I think it should count just as much as any other ring possible. What is your take on this?
I agree. I mean, I've been pretty vocal about that because obviously we've discussed it. I've heard both sides. I think there are certain. I mean, if you're using it as like criteria, as to like if you're part of your criteria, I should say, is ranking players based on like difficulty of title runs. That's completely different, because you talk about a competition, things like that. But I think that a ring is a ring, and it's the same. When you're talking about resumes, it's the same thing. I don't really think there's an asterisk next to it. It means the same thing to me. And you could talk about strength of schedule, stuff like that, but to me, it's all part of the resume. I mean, I think that it's valid if players have an opinion about it and things like that, just because of the circumstances, the wild circumstances around it. It was kind of unheard of. But I'm with you that it's at the end of the day, it's a ring that goes up there, and it would have applied if whoever won it. So, I don't I don't use it to knock, in this case LeBron, in even a higher rank based upon that.
I want to push back on you because you said that you're talking about eras and you're talking about circumstances about the competition. I think that's null and void. So in comparison to what you just said, how does this ring rank up against all the other context per era championships that have occurred throughout NBA history? Would you rank it? Let's just say I am putting you on the spot, but I want to give you some leeway. Do you put it in like a third category? Is it a bottom third championship? Is it whatever, or is it actually something important that it's fantastic that they won that championship? I mean,
if we're ranking titles and whatnot, obviously I think there are levels to that, and that can kind of boost a player up, specifically context like that particular ring. I know they went through like a Nuggets team that definitely was not nearly as good at like a few years later. Jokic wasn't really even prime then. They beat a Rockets team and a Heat team that was maybe the worst version of the Heat in in that decade. There was injuries galore. They had a really good team as well, especially defensively. They won, yes, but yeah, as far as just ranking that, I think that was, especially as far as like SRS goes, it was one of the worst. As far as like playoff or competition wise, it was one of the worst three teams of all time. I think it was like right behind the '87 Lakers or something, as far as like just easiest runs. To me, I mean, if when you're breaking that down and having that conversation, that matters. And as to juxtapose that, like some of the hardest runs, right? Like we saw, like the '94 Rockets, having some of the hardest runs of all time. Especially they didn't have home court in any series, and they were all 50+ win teams. Lakers 01-02 run, ridiculous. 2010 Lakers. So yeah, there are levels, I think, to circumstances and accomplishments when it comes to your domination versus, what you're doing. And just like, the Celtics got knocked for that last year when they won, and they're like every single team had multiple injuries that they went through. And so, I mean, I think you can rank rings. Like I said, it doesn't affect their resume too much, but I think you can definitely grade championships for sure.
See, and just to double down for me, I don't think you can. I think it's all about situation and circumstance. I think from our friend Rex, that's one of his favorite phrases. The point of it is that you are the best or you're not in a season or a categorization. So if you want to rank it by decade, etc., or I think the most definitive way you do it is by season, because they actually categorize who is the champion of scoring, who's the champion of assists, and then everything else that came past that, rebounds, steals, blocks, and then you give the all-team NBAs, you give the all-team defense, etc., all the awards that have come a long time. The point of it is that you're the best or you're not in respect to how somebody measures it. So if there is a clear distinction, and especially of recent age, where you get bonuses for achieving certain awards, say like as being an all-star, being all NBA, or being the MVP, or winning titles to be a champion of whatever statistical title or team champion, I think that, especially with that considered, that it matters, especially of recent years, but I think of all time it matters categorically. So why doesn't it matter to you? That's what I ask you.
You mean like as far as
categorically?
You mean like
why does it not matter that if you're the best of your time, how it's measured typically by year?
So to me, I mean, it does matter. Like I said, I if I'm stacking up players, right, and I'm not going to be like, hey, this ring has an asterisk, this one doesn't, and dock their rankings like that. I will never do that. But if I'm looking at championship runs and whatnot, I don't consider era, like I don't era tax for sure. But there are certain, like sometimes you can definitely see certain circumstances surrounding playoff runs, right? Like was a team, and I get it, injuries happen. That's not the fault of your opponent or anything like that. I get that for sure. But those things do happen, and it's reality, and that does affect the outcome in a lot of these situations. And to me, it's just not as impressive if a team goes through champion. Like that's why I've always been so hard on the 07 Cavs run. People tout that as like the greatest things ever happened in basketball, but if you really dig into that run, they went against like 2 sub 500 teams, or 500 teams exactly, one of which were missing their 2 best starters in Arenas and I think of the other guy's name, but like they were just it was a decimated team, and then they beat a team that was barely 500. So that team runs like that were overrated, but otherwise like some of the harder runs, right? Even like some of the things the Bulls were doing. To me, it's just more impressive. Like I said, I don't use it to rank or even greatest teams, but like, to me, there are levels to championship runs, and that's the context of it. Like the team can be great, but how'd you get there? I think you can have a conversation about that.
What's the difference? Because we've recently had a debate, and I'm not bringing it back to this debate specifically. However, what's really the difference between the 1983 76ers, the 2001 Lakers, and then the 2017 Golden State Warriors? Why do a lot of people consider, I don't remember if you said this specifically, and if you disagree, that's fine, but if you can give conjecture at least, why do people think that Lakers team, because they have one extra win, even though they all had one loss in their playoff seasons in respect to winning their championships in that respective year, why is that Golden State Warriors postseason considerably considered one of the best ever, where they're often considered the greatest team of all time?
Well, I mean, because I think their main difference, like between, 83 Sixers were fantastic. Like they had multiple guys who were like top 5 in MVP DPY voting. I think Moses Malone won an MVP that year, if I'm not mistaken. I had to double check.
He did.
Yeah, they were fantastic. I mean, those were great teams. The Warriors specifically, right? Like they had everyone, like obviously they signed KD, and so their expectations were super high, right? The expectation was that they would just dominate, and they lived up to those. Like obviously the regular season record wasn't as good as it was the previous year, but that it meant nothing, right? Because we knew that they were a better team, more options, Kevin Durant, and they did exactly what they were supposed to do with the playoff run here. And I mean, it's like that was expected, and they were great. Like I don't dock them, and because they had all the elements of greatness, right? They had 2 former league MVPs, right? They had, a fantastic depth of bench. Like they had great role players. You had Draymond Green. You had Iguodala. You had all these guys who were stepping up, and they had Steve Kerr. Like they were heavily favored, and they were one of the few teams that I'd say lived up to that. Lakers, they were the champions, yes, but no one I don't think saw it coming, especially because they had a bunch of injury concerns in the regular season, but also they gelled. And then you look at who they were beating, right? Teams that had the best offense in the league, teams that had the best defense in the league all year long, teams that had a better record than them and were whole throughout. They beat a team that had the MVP, Sixth Man of the Year, Coach of the Year, and DPOY. No other team has ever checked all 4 of those boxes in one single season. The Sixers did that year, and the Lakers beat them. And doing that with only 1 loss, it just, when you accomplish something like that, and they were blowing them out, and it's just like nobody saw a playoff run like that coming. It was like the most unexpected thing that's ever happened in like the league. And I mean, that was greatness to me. That was huge greatness. And I mean, if you're talking, like I said, better than, that we get into that murky area, right? I think you can say the Sixers or the Warriors were better, maybe the best team ever, right? If you're talking talent standpoint. So that's what I think about. I mean, those, everything's better and greater are different things.
Yeah, I think better and greater are different things. I just am curious, outside of the difference between a couple of rounds and how the playoffs are organized, in respect to, now I framed it as best teams ever, but the 83 Sixers had a great record. The 01 Lakers particularly, didn't in comparison to the 83 Sixers and the 17 Warriors. The point of it is that I think that they are all fantastic in their place and time, and just for the circumstances. So going that deep into the playoffs and only losing once to the tournament that describes through the regular season who the best teams are in the league, I think it's all fantastic in respect to whatever year it was, or other years where they still had fantastic runs as well, including the 71 Bucks, or in the regular season, you could talk about the 67 Sixers or the 72 Lakers. They still all had fantastic runs in totality. The point of it is that I want to bring it back to the subject, is ultimately the 2020 Lakers won the championship. In the circumstances, do I personally think it's corny? Absolutely. I think it is a bed, a cesspool, a situation where corruption and entertainment can run wild in respect to the 2020 championship run in a hotel, practically, in Orlando. So
Yeah.
is it corny? Absolutely. Can I say that LeBron James didn't win that championship? I cannot, amongst that Lakers team at large. So when people say that most players don't think it counts, I think it's really an indictment on their situation where it's entertainment. What do you think about that? Do you think that the NBA, with these statements to say that, where these NBA players are saying that it's corny per se, / Daryl Morey, do you think that a lot of these former NBA players are trying to out the aspect that the NBA is just pure entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think they're very much aware, especially now that like their product is under the under the magnifying glass, because you like the critics have been very vocal, especially the last few years, right? Like there's too many threes. Players they're viewed as not being as competitive as they were before, right? Like a lot of that started, I think, after the bubble, because you had all the scrutiny saying no, it's real or whatever, and there was a lot of shine put on that. And I mean, I think there's something to say that the fan interest arguably is way down as far as like mainstream viewership. And you just have all these narratives that popped up and perpetuated themselves, and the owners are well aware of that, and that's why I think that, like, especially like with all the player movement that's happened recently, like there's just a sense of the league, like players don't want to sit there and build teams, like it's hard to get fan interest and like, oh hey, I identify with this team because it's always changing, or we never have a chance, whatever the case is. There's a lot of problems right now, and I think that a lot of the owners and players, they're acutely aware of that, and it's tough to say that there's a way out, because I think the perception right now is like most players are just in it for the money, right? Like you don't really have like those cutthroat competitors, right? Who are just like, no, I don't care, I'm going to win at any cost, like the Kobe's or the Mikes, or all these players that had all these great rivalries that we thrived on growing up. So it's tough. I don't think the bubble helped that. Because I mean, it sure was basketball, no home court, whatever. But, I just think there's a lot of problems in the league right now.
So I think in ways outside of just the pure breadth of NBA history, I think Daryl Morey did scorch LeBron James in respect to he is echoing things that other people are saying, which is a shame in its own right, because Daryl Morey is supposed to be this proponent of skilled basketball players, especially with his analytic context or his approach to drafting or signing players. Although the 76ers were absolutely horrid, my team, I'm wearing red right now, but the aspect of it is that it's disgusting that this guy, who I've lost a lot of favor for, I was happy when he signed with them immediately in respect to getting the contract to be the general manager. But what has happened since then? The point of it is that I think he's scorched the entire NBA, let alone LeBron James, by echoing some of this recent approach by a lot of ex-NBA players, particularly, let alone fringe talking heads.
Yeah.
So I think it is a burn on LeBron James. In respect to, for me, holistically, I think it is less so, because you can argue that it's been entertainment the entire time. But what's your thoughts on that?
I think, I mean, I agree with you. And like, I would be a lot more, and especially like in recent weeks, I would be a lot more apt to be like to push back on takes like that, as I have for other players in the past. If players or people are trying to come out and discredit things, I'd be a lot more apt to push back. But LeBron James does not make it easy, man, because after that, he's public come out and said that he's the GOAT, and like he'll come out and he'll do things to self-aggrandize a lot. How he interacts with fans a lot of times, like, it's well documented. And I mean, when it's hard to actually just root for a player, obviously, I don't use emotion when I'm trying to rank them, but when you see a player doing that and like he's so vocal about certain things that are like weird, that you're kind of like, okay, whatever. I kind of see, because multiple players have come out and said, hey, and he took offense at like, hey, I think Kobe's better, or I think Mike's better, and like, there's just this rolling thing. Like, when it's obvious you have a huge ego, it makes people not really want to go up to bat for you, right? Like, unless they're just, super biased homers for you. Like if you're just an NBA fan, you're like, kind of want to shy away from the guy. I don't know.
Does that affect your opinion on LeBron as being the GOAT in respect to his persona? Do you think that affects his icon negatively? And you've accused me of being a Webster dictionary proponent or citation guy. So one of those things is being eminence in respect to the definition of greatness. Mm-hmm. So do you think that affects his eminence of being so self-aggrandizing?
Oh, 100%. Eminence also implies that like the league has like, or that you have a certain aura and air, when you take the court or whatever sport it is, like people are like afraid of you and like just have you in like this huge respect. I think that's lost. I think LeBron was at that point one time where, before all his egocentric stuff, where he was just dominant to the point where he could let his game do the talking, and he was at that point. But now it's become like a circus wherever he's gone. Yeah, I think he's still putting up great numbers and top 10 player by any metric, right? But yeah, it definitely affects his aura and his legacy, 100%. Especially his icon, when you're talking about guys who's inevitably compared to, like Mike, Kobe, all these guys, because we did not see them really do that. I can't remember a time Kobe came out and was like, saying, "No, I'm the best. Me." Kobe wasn't going to 4 or 5 teams, and to me, yeah, that 1,000% affects his icon, his status, his aura. And yeah, his respect, honestly, definitely 100%.
Yeah. For me, I think it is self-telling that I understand being a layman and being just a nobody in respect to the grander scheme of celebrity per se. Like, hey, if I felt like I'm great and I want to profess that, then yeah, sure, I want to profess that. But LeBron James, in respect to these all-time greats, however you want to list them off, whether it's Michael Jordan first, Kareem, you get Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, all these guys that you could say are in competition amongst others, that it is kind of telling that he has some sort of insecurity about his place in respect to NBA history by saying that publicly on YouTube. Now, I'm not saying it's unhuman, because if I were, I am a nobody in comparison to LeBron James. But the point of it is that if I felt as much, is that people are giving me so much criticism in comparison to not particularly my peers or contemporaries, but people in the aspect of that they're in the same realm of conversation where people are arguing these points, then yeah, I might feel a little insecure about it, or I want to speak up. But there's a difference between me and a billionaire and the person with that fame behind them. Or, you know what I mean, in ways, because we're all people at the end of the day. But in respect to the conversation, nobody cares what I have to say compared to LeBron James in respect to basketball, at the very least. So, like, why say that? You are, and it might be the point, is that he is still feeding off of this villain arc or persona that people have said he's tried to get away from. But I think, if anything, that's drawn him the most attention as being the bad guy. Mm-hmm. So I think he still lives off of it. I think he tried to walk away from it. But I think and I've said this before, I think he's the greatest heel in NBA history.
Yeah, no, that's not a hot take. I mean, you're right. I don't think that there's actually, not that I can remember, since I started watching basketball, how there's been like a guy you actively rooted against more than LeBron James, I mean, and it's like you said, it's really his own doing. Like, you know, like a lot of these GOAT discussions or comparisons happen naturally, right? Like when, you know, like the whole. I remember when Kobe started. They started to throw around a lot of Michael Jordan references, like Kobe, and it wasn't because Kobe was out. It was because of how his game was, how stylistic he was, his production, his accolades. So that those came naturally, right? People like the broadcast, all of us were like, "Hey, Michael Jordan too," or whatever, and it was fun. But Kobe wasn't out there doing podcasts or, saying that he was the greatest player ever and that he needs respect, like all these stuff. Like, was Kobe perfect? No, absolutely not. But like, none of these players they were focused on the game. They, they went to work, like they had beefs. They were friendly with each other, but they would always say, "You know what? I really want to beat this guy." There were rivalries. But with LeBron James, it's he's been ongoing where he's been, like you said, the biggest heel ever, and like it's hard to root for him because of everything that's been everything he's said and done. And never mind the team hopping. That's one thing I don't hold against him, but that adds to it. And so I'm not sure there'll be another more divisive, I should say, personality in the NBA, for at least years to come, right? So,
yeah, I think it'll come if somebody wants to accept it. And I think you being around my same age, you're a little older than me, but I think people today are at least a lot more publicly passive versus being, at least, to say it nicely, assertive in what they feel or think. I think a lot of younger people really just ride with the waves and they don't want to give opinions. I'm not saying that wasn't the case when we were younger or past generations or in forever. I'm not saying it's a phenomena. I just think that a lot of people today, at least from my perspective as a, however you want to put it, I guess you could say I'm a middle-aged person, but it just seems that people aren't really as assertive as they were in the past, where they mean what they say and they say what they mean. I think there's a lot of lacking things. I think a lot of people have imposter syndrome in certain ways. The aspect of it is that I think that there can be somebody that surpasses the being a great heel or being a superstar, like Michael Jordan, or if you want to associate that with LeBron James. I think somebody can surpass both of them, but will it happen with this attention-driven media in respect to self-serving dissemination of your life, your impact on whatever you're doing in whatever profession or industry is probably a better terminology to use. So is it going to happen? I'm not saying it will, but I think it can. I just don't know if people have the drive or will to do so in respect to matching the skill set. I think that that's one great thing about LeBron is that he was or is one of the last people to have come out of the pre-dominant social media age and then still be involved with it as it's evolved during the times. Do you think somebody can do that? Do you think somebody can surpass that in this social media age? Or do you think that the times are past in respect to personality-driven a push, like, for lack of a better term for media?
I mean, like you said, I think it's possible, but like also, like you said, it would be the person would have to be actively seeking that, right? Because obviously LeBron laid the foundation or blueprint, so you could always copy that. But like, it's not the exact same thing. But you heard like what Anthony Edwards said, right? Like when they went up to him because they were trying to push the whole, "Oh my gosh, your game is like Michael Jordan, and you're the next Jordan." They were trying to push that, and then they straight up asked him like, "Hey, do you want to be the face of the league?" And he said, no way, I don't want to do that, you know. And even they asked LeBron about that. They're like, who's the face of the league? He's like, well, I don't think anybody wants to do it because it puts you on such a spotlight, you know, and like they're going to obviously retroactively compare you to LeBron James with whatever baggage that comes with. But I think it's possible. Like you'd have to have a very gregarious, you know, really outspoken person who's not afraid, like you said, to be outspoken and assertive and, you know, have like KD hot takes, you know, as far as social media goes, things like that, you know, be really maybe aggressive with the media, unapologetic. I mean, it's possible. It's just that I think that a lot of players, though, most of them, especially these new age, you know, because we're losing, they're going to lose the Currys, you know, we're going to lose the LeBron, KDs, you know, but this current age of players, I think their main focus is head down, get money, what's better for my family. They don't want to rock the boat, you know, and I think it's going to continue to be like that, you know, because, you know, they're not looking to be like, hey, I want to start a rivalry with this team or whatever. They're not giving huge ESPN interviews about how they think this guy's a clown and they can't wait to see him and stuff like that. It's all just buddy. I respect by the numbers. And so, I mean, the NBA is I don't want to say it's soft, but it's getting way more like boring unless you're a purist, you know? So it's, you know, I think there can be a villain, yes, to answer your question, but it would take them going way against what the norm is quickly to become, I think. Coca-Cola. Oh, it happens. Surviving?
I'm not. It's terrible.
No.
It's terrible. Son, I'm going to survive. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you for.
But I guess.
Thank you. No, it's so terrible. The situation. I can't even talk anymore. I can't even breathe. The situation you're describing is so terrible in respect to any sense of entertainment, because you have people live that have such a skill set and they are trying to be pushed as the face of the league, but they don't have the heart to even drive the thing that drives attention to them, the entertainment value. Yeah. It's a shame you got guys like Anthony Edwards asking or acting like that. It's ridiculous. It's just purely ridiculous in a phrase that you're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. That's why you lost.
That's why I lost.
No, I mean, that's not why. That's not why you lost. But
the point of it is that, thanks, Anthony.
No, but the point of it is that there is a lack of appeal to want to follow personalities in the NBA because they are so passive in respect to wanting to be recognized holistically with the NBA at large. They're more individual. They're more self-serving. They're not stewards of the profession or the league. You got guys like Larry Bird talking about how these guys are better today. I don't think he believes that. I think he says that to steward the game, to say, hey, the NBA is fantastic. Keep watching it because it's something that I'm involved with, and it's purely not purely, but largely associated with the game of basketball. And I think a lot of these guys are not going to, in respect to the superstars. I mean, this might be a stretch, but I don't see the outward personas being there that will push it as strong as the guys do in respect to yesteryear or today.
No, exactly.
I'm sorry. You were going to ask me a question, but I started I was
going to ask you. I mean, you kind of touched on it, honestly. because obviously you hear one of the things I think is ridiculous is that you're saying like where they say that every player now is better than every player back then, and like they just keep running with this like effort to just kind of discredit other eras. That's that's part of the whole silly GOAT debate. Casuals use that, right? But my question is, I've always said that I think the league is just because of necessity, right? The play style, the league is deeper because ways to scout evolves, what expectations evolve. I think that league is deeper than it has been in terms of what players focus on and can do as far as just like shooting threes instead of being like just a guy who soaks up 6 fouls, whatever. But I mean, what's your take on it? I think it's I don't think that players are necessarily better than they have been. I think it's their play style different, and like maybe teams are deeper maybe than they have been, but out of necessity. What's your take on that?
I think initially I want to say it's nuanced. I want to say no up front with prefacing that. I don't want to say it's deeper. I think that because there are 30 teams, I think if you want to call, the deepest teams of all time, they have to have less teams. We did a 2K draft, an all-time 2K draft on the Takes Debates, Hoop Conductor, Casual Reacts, whatever channel, however you want to put it. We did that recently. So, again, that's amplified of the situation, but it showcases how when you integrate certain all-time great players together, or even within a season, how much really it matters. Because if you look at across all of our teams, I don't think anyone in respect to the 2K game had less than the 90 overall on their team, unless they were just trolling. And I think that's a stretch. It's probably more like 93 or 94 or higher that nobody had one of those or lower. It's about team construction and how they play and all that sort of stuff. So in respect to the teams being deeper, I think it's a matter of perspective. So if you want to focus on guys that today's league has better set shot 3-point shooters, okay, sure. But then you got to take into perspective, well, what about their post game? How do they act off the step? How do they act when they get double teamed? Or how do they act when they get somebody in drop coverage? How do they act when somebody goes over on a pick and pop? There's all these perspectives, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert at, but I understand that these are factors. Like, I can't tell you how somebody moves their hand that it's going to be more effective, or how somebody steps off of their foot, or how somebody switches their hips. I'm not going to pretend that I know that compared to an expert at basketball, but I know that it matters. And I know that people today favor the long shot more than those mid-range to low post games in a set position. In today's game, they favor more so attacking the basket in respect to cuts to the basket or layups, amongst other aspects of just movement to the basket, and then long shots versus some of that mid-range game with some of that high post off the face up off the first step just to get a 1 or 2 step mid-range shot. They practically, it's non-existent in today's NBA. So does that mean somebody's better? I don't think so. I think it's just a matter of distance. So if you want to say that there's better 3-point shooters today, I would say at large, I'd agree, because that's what they're training to do, because that's the culture, that's the situation in today's NBA. Does that particularly make them better basketball players? I would say that is non-specific in respect to that just one thing. And I think that's what largely people associate with basketball players today is what's better. And I disagree with that. Do you think that if you're a better 3-point shooter, and again, I'm in respect to how a lot of people look at today's game, do you think that guys that are better three-point shooters, do you think that they have the equal amount of skill as guys in the past that operated more so professionally in the mid-range to low post area? Or do you think that they're on par? Or is it something that you don't have a strong opinion on?
I think, like you said, I think it's just expectations. I think a lot of guys right now are just by necessity and circumstance and era, right? I think obviously we have more apt and skilled 3-point shooters in the league, just because, like I said, that's what you practice. A lot of time, various situations, especially if you're trying to make the NBA, because that's what they play. They play spread offense. You're going to have to get your, if you want to make a team, whatever. Like, that's what they're looking for. But I think you made a great point about what the focus was before it kind of all went crazy. Like, you had to be, how was your fundamentals? Like, how crisp were your screens? Like, how great were you off pick and roll? How good were you at recognizing different, defensive assignments, coverages, things like that? Like, how was your overall offensive IQ? I think a lot of that's kind of gone away. And, just because, I think a lot of players today think, we're not going to play defense or these complex offensive because, we're just going to shoot a three or whatever. It's not really an inside-out game anymore. And so, I would say that you have players who are more skilled at certain things, like shooting overall, but, specifically from the arc. But I think that a lot of players were better at different things overall that maybe it's a little bit lost on.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got a message from my wife telling me I should get ready for bed. So I think this is time.
Fair enough.
To shut this thing down. So I think this is a great discussion. And yeah, so do you want to promote the debates that are happening this weekend or potential debates?
Absolutely, guys. So stay tuned for what we're doing. Dart versus Herm. Who's greater, Bob Cousy or Oscar Robertson? Right, and that again is going to be for everyone here on the main line. It's going to be 8 Pacific Daylight Time, 11 Eastern Standard Time. Okay, and tune in for that. It's going to be fantastic. That's going to lead off our weekend of debates. Myself, I'm going to be debating casual on Sunday at noon Eastern. I'm there, and obviously it's going to be 9 here. We're going to be the topic for that is going to be which top 10 alpha had the most championship help in NBA history. Okay, so we're going to be it's either Magic Johnson or Larry Bird. So I'm Magic, he's Larry. You show up, tell us what you think, and we'll have a whole weekend of doing that. And look out, obviously we've been discussing this. We're going to have some new segments, hopefully starting up next week on various days. And just stay tuned on, like and subscribe, and stay tuned, and we'll let you know when that content's going to start off. But there are any last words there, buddy?
Yeah, we should have a double header after your debate with Casual as well, or before, however we schedule it. Either between myself and Hoop God or myself and NBA Sports. If it's between me and NBA Sports, Nick, it'll be Hulk Hogan versus Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's the greater wrestler. Or it'll be between me and Hoop God, who's the greater Celtic, Bill Russell or Larry Bird, where I will be arguing for Bill Russell. And but that's to be determined. So we will see. Either way, we'll still have some fantastic debates. So yeah, thanks Travis for putting out this idea to talk about this topic. I don't know how much we touched on it. I think we talked more conceptually and abstract about.
We covered a variety of things. Yeah. But no, absolutely.
We can we're all centralized about the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all right.
But you want to sign us off?
Yeah. So everyone, again, just stay tuned for a whole weekend full of great stuff. Next week we'll be expanding and coming at you. And so again, this is Lights Out, where we dare you to debate. And just know that. Have a good night.